CPS staff, and welcome to the November 15th virtual session for middle school teachers. My name is Tracy Brown with the Office of Instructional Technology, and in this session, we're going to talk about Brightspace Portfolio for parent conferences. This is a great tool that allows you to show parents students' work rather than just talking about it. It gives you a chance to show them not only what their child is doing, but the type of feedback that you're giving to the student, and then what they're choosing to do with that, like revisions and things like that. So the agenda of what we're going to talk about during this session, we're going to talk about two different ways that the portfolio is accessed. One tool is called Portfolio, the other is called My Portfolio, and they're basically designed for different individuals. So we're going to talk about that here in a minute. We're going to talk about how artifacts are added to the portfolio, what types of artifacts can be added. We're going to get into some of those additional features, things like giving feedback, making comments, even categorizing the artifacts so that students can find them easier. We're going to talk about offline work. What if everything amazing that your students are doing in your class is not always in their digital tools or even shared through Brightspace? What do you do with those types of artifacts that you might want to put into a portfolio? And then we're going to get a look at the teacher, student, and parent views. Realistically, we're going to do that throughout, but oftentimes I build these agenda lists here just to make sure that I cover the things that I need to. So I added that there to make sure that I do cover those. And then, of course, I'm going to wrap up by giving you guys some resources that will help you get started using the portfolio if you haven't already tried that. So with that, let's go ahead and jump out of this presentation and let's get into talking about the portfolio tool. So I'm going to go to my Brightspace course, and here I am as a teacher in one of my courses. And for the teacher, you'll find portfolio under your class tools menu option. But I mentioned a moment ago that there's something called My Portfolio and something called Portfolio. And the difference is who those different tools are for. Portfolio is for the teacher. My portfolio is for the student. And we're going to see that in a moment when we switch over to the student view. In fact, if you're a teacher and you click on My Portfolio, one of the first clues that you've gone to the wrong place is the fact that you get stuck on this spinning screen and you pretty much stay on this spinning screen forever. It doesn't load because you're not a student and therefore you don't have anything in the My Portfolio. So if you find yourself on that spinning screen, you know that's when you say, oh, whoops, I went to My Portfolio instead of Portfolio. So now I'm going to click on the one that just says Portfolio for my class. And this is going to take me to a dashboard where I can see portfolios for all the different students who are enrolled in my course here. So you can see lots of my office mates are enrolled in my class as students here. And then we've got some little icons across the bottom that tell me things like how many pieces of evidence has this student added to my class? Is it shared with parents or guardians? And has it been approved? So you can see for some of my students, there's numbers attached to those icons, and for a lot of them, there isn't. Without the numbers, that means nothing has been added to the portfolio yet. If I, the teacher, want to add something to a student's portfolio, I would simply select on this student. And this is where it's important for me to kind of back up for a moment and reiterate how the portfolio tool works. The portfolio is specific to the class and then specific to the student. So if I wanted to add something to my demo student for a different class, I would need to make sure that I navigate into that class first, then select on My Portfolio and choose the student. By coming into this class, I'm adding artifacts or evidence for this student in this course. So you always want to navigate to the course first, and the same thing is true of the student. We're going to see how students can add portfolio artifacts here in a minute. They need to go to the correct course first because the artifacts are specific to the course and specific to the student. So I'm going to select, and then you'll see that I can see artifacts previously added for this particular student in this class, but I've got the big blue button right here to add to the portfolio. I can drag or drop using the browse option to look for files that are on my computer or drag a file up into there, but I also have access to Google Drive and OneDrive. I happen to use a lot of Google files with my students, so I'm going to select on Google Drive. And of course, this is going to search my Google Drive, not the student's drive. So if the student is the only one who currently has access to the particular file that I want to add here to the portfolio, I would need to ask the student to either share the file with me, or I would need to ask that student to upload the artifact to the portfolio themselves. And again, we're going to see how the student can do that in a moment. But I'm going to go ahead and grab an artifact here that I can put up on behalf of the student. So this would be like if the student had turned this into me, I can add this to the portfolio for them. So now I have added an artifact from Google Drive to my demo student's portfolio. And we have a couple of additional options down here. For example, I can click here to share this with parents or guardians. And what that's going to do is make it available to parents for parents to see when they log into Brightspace for parent and guardian. And again, we'll get a chance to see that view here in a few moments. I can see any feedback that I've given the student on this particular artifact. We can see categories, and again, categories makes it easier for students or teachers to search for particular items. So if you're placing a lot of artifacts in the portfolio, categories get helpful, just like putting files into folders helps organize a drive. And then we can spotlight something. This might be a great way to choose a particular artifact that you would like parents to pay attention to as you're approaching the conference. Because again, if you're using the portfolio a lot, if there's 5 or 6 or 7 artifacts, I might want the parents to pay attention to something that we did recently, not something that was done the first day of school, or maybe I would want to spotlight something done way back at the beginning of the year versus something done now if I'm trying to demonstrate some student growth. So spotlighting can help draw attention to the specific artifacts that I want the parent or the student to really pay attention to. In order to add information here, some of those additional features that were mentioned, I'm going to select on the artifact to open it up. So now you can see here I have an option to download the artifact itself, which is actually just going to open it in another tab. So you can see I just grabbed a template of a choice board here, but that would allow me to open it up and see the specific artifact that I had added or the student had added. We've got an option down here to add an audio file, and you'll see above it, it says the student has something to say. So this is really where you'd want the student to comment or add something about their artifact. What did they learn from this? How many times did they need to make revisions? What did they find the most challenging? Whatever they wanted to say about this particular artifact in completing this assignment. Similarly, there's an option to add a written reflection, and this would also be for the student to say something about their learning. We've mentioned the categories down here. Categories have to be created by the teacher, but can be added by the student or the teacher. So when I select, you'll see here that it comes first to school categories, and then there's a second option here for class categories. You will want to use the class categories, not the school categories. You can see that I currently have a category that I've created previously called Unit 1 Project, but if I wanted to give this a different category, I would simply choose Go to Category Manager, and I could build a new category right here before adding that. I'm going to go ahead and back up to my portfolio there and go right back into my student and right back into the artifact that we're looking at here. So adding a category, simply click the drop down and follow it through, and then you'll also be able to see any categories added by the student. I mentioned a moment ago, teachers can categorize work, students can categorize work. The only one that can build the categories is the teacher. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that this is a Unit 1 project. You'll see that category immediately pops up, and then I can simply click off of that to collapse that extra menu there. If we move up to the upper right-hand corner here, this is an area for you to give the student feedback on this item. And parents will be able to see this feedback. So this is a great opportunity for you to post some comments about where you saw difficulties for the child, revisions that they made while they were working on the assignment, things that stood out to you that you're proud of, like, you persisted and you kept working on this, you struggled with vocabulary, but as I commented on it, you got back into using that. You can also add rubrics. Your rubric must be pre-created. You do not have the ability to build a rubric from right here, but you can find any rubrics that exist in this course. So you can see in this particular class here, I've created some sample rubrics. They're nothing really special, but I would be able to add a rubric for this portfolio item that would also allow parents to see specific feedback and how their child was graded on this particular assignment. And then we have that option there to share with the parents. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out a little bit of this. Okay, so you can see now that I've added some teacher feedback over here. I do have the ability to continue to add additional comments and feedback to this, and I've turned on the option to share with parents. I did not put in a reflection or an audio file because, again, the way that it's worded here, it's really something for the student to share their thoughts on this particular assignment, their reflection. So I would encourage people to leave that for the student to add what they would like to say. So now let's switch over and let's take a look at a student's view of adding to the portfolio. So here I have the exact same course. I'm in my TE Brown 1 PD class, but in this case, I'm logged in as a student, and that's my demo student again. So the student would go to Class Tools. You'll see they don't have the portfolio option at all. They only have My Portfolio, which is where students access their portfolios and upload their artifacts. So portfolio for teachers, My Portfolio for students. Students would come here and select My Portfolio. And for their dashboard, what's going to load first is a thumbnail of all of the different courses that they have. And they would want to start by navigating into the course that they want to upload an artifact for. So I'm going to find my TE Brown 1 PD course and select on that. And now you can see that the student can see the same two artifacts that the teacher saw a moment ago. Doesn't matter who adds the artifacts, they are visible to both the teachers and the students in the class. I can open the artifact that my teacher added for me, and I can even add my audio file, my reflection down there. I can add my own categories to it, and so on. So I have all of these options, whether I add the artifact or whether the teacher adds the artifact. But let's go back for just a moment. And you'll see I also have the blue Add to Portfolio button, which gives me the exact same options that my teacher saw. I can drag and drop a file here. I can browse to find something saved on my computer, or I can pull something from Google Drive or OneDrive. So if it were, again, something like a Google file that I didn't currently have shared with my teacher, then that would be on me, the student, to add that to my portfolio here. Let's go in and let's work with the existing file that has been added. So as the student, I'm going to open that again. On the right-hand side, I can see my teacher's feedback. If there were a rubric attached, I would be able to see that and access it and open it. But you can see as the student, I don't have the ability to attach a rubric to this. I do have that upload an audio file. And again, this is an opportunity for me, the student, to say something about completing this project. What am I proud of? What did I struggle the most with? How do I feel this demonstrates my growth? So on. Same thing with that reflection. I think the audio and the text are both kind of a way for the student to talk about the project. And it's really a question of whether they're comfortable expressing themselves out loud or whether they're comfortable expressing themselves written. So it's just an option for them to add either. I'm going to click on the upload an audio file, and you'll see it is not a record. It is an upload. So the student would need to utilize some other tool to record audio before they were able to attach that here to the artifact. If I want to write out my reflection, of course, I can just click in the box and I can start typing. And finally, coming down here to the bottom, we can see that my teacher has already added a category here called Unit 1 Project, but I, as the student, also have the ability to click in here and find our class categories and add anything that I also feel applies to this particular artifact. So let's back out of this artifact again, and let's stay on that idea of categories. What if you are using categories in your courses for students? The way that they would search by applying those is right here on their portfolio page by selecting on filter. And you'll see that we have the ability to look at different types of evidence, like those that are shared with parents, those with categories, those without, the ones that are spotlighted. But over here on the right-hand side, we have the ability to choose that class category that I recommended a moment ago. And all of these would be listed here, and the student would be able to choose the particular class category to see the artifacts that had been uploaded and identified as fitting that particular category. So it's as simple as most other search features on the web, where you're using filters to find specifically the things that you would like to look at. So finally, let's jump over and let's look at the portfolio from the perspective of a parent. So here I am logged into my parent account, viewing what my son does in his Brightspace courses. One of the cards or tiles that is available here in my dashboard is the portfolio. So if a teacher or student uploads an artifact to the student's portfolio and then chooses share with parents, that parent will be able to select on that item from here and open it to see exactly what the student had done in class, and also the teacher feedback, listen to the audio, the reflection, and so on. The parent has the download button here, which would allow them to bring up the specific file that is being commented on and evaluated here. We can click to hear the audio file if my son had uploaded anything. We can see his reflection on this. He said it was his favorite project of the course. We can see the categories added by the student down here, categories added by the student's teacher. And over on the right-hand side, the parent can see the feedback given by the teacher. And once again, if there had been a rubric attached, the parent would be able to click on that and open it. So having this up when parents come in to do conferences is a great way for them to see what exactly is their child doing in class, what types of feedback and comments are you having to make on their assignments to help them improve it. But if you have multiple artifacts, this can be a great way to demonstrate the students' growth from the start of the year, when they may have been very hesitant to complete certain assignments, maybe not followed directions as much as you would like them to. And then as we move into the quarter, into the semester, or into the school year, you can show that growth and how the students have changed over the course of the year. So everything is view only here for the parents' view, but they would be able to see any artifacts that had been shared and click into those artifacts from over here on the portfolio card on the right-hand side. Coming back into our presentation, let's talk a little bit about some important things to note. These are things that I may have mentioned as we were going through looking at the portfolio from the teacher's perspective, the students, and so on, but they're things that are important, so I really want to revisit some of these or make sure that they are mentioned so that you understand how to best utilize the portfolio with your students here. Starting off with our things to note. Any artifacts for the portfolio can be submitted by the teacher or the student. Keep in mind, when we're talking about things like Google Files or OneDrive files, it really depends on who owns the file. If the file is owned by the student, you're going to want the student to be the one to upload it, even if you need to help them do that. If the file has been submitted and is owned by the teacher, then the teacher will be able to find that. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to that last bullet point down there on the right, which is being mindful of Google Files. We'll talk about that. Your rubrics must pre-exist. When you go to attach a rubric, you don't have the ability to build the rubric at that time. So you would need to build the rubric as a part of your assignment, and then you would be able to find it in the portfolio and attach it. The portfolio is specific to the student and the class. Remember, for the teacher, they had to navigate into the class first, and then select on the student that they wanted to add or see an artifact for. For the student, when they select on my portfolio, it shows the thumbnail of all of the classes that they're in, and they would select on the class that they either wanted to see or add an artifact for. The teacher is the only one who can choose to share artifacts with parents. Students can put artifacts into their portfolio, but they need to ask their teacher to make it available for parents to see those artifacts. Moving over to the right-hand side, the teacher must add the categories to the portfolio tool in order for them to be added to a particular artifact. So the teacher is the only one who can create the categories. Categories can be created while evaluating the artifact. Unlike your rubrics, you can be in a particular student's artifact and thinking, this would be a cool new category, and you can add it right there on the fly. But of course, only a teacher feature. You want to choose class categories, not school categories. School categories are mostly like the names of courses and stuff, which becomes very redundant. If the artifact was added to the science class, you don't really need to categorize it as science. Everything in that portfolio is going to be for the science class. So that's why you want to choose class categories and not school. Let's talk about that last bullet point down there. Be mindful of your Google files. Keep in mind, or be aware if you did not know, students cannot share Google files outside of AACPS. So if a Google file is owned by a student and uploaded to the portfolio and then shared with parents, parents will not be able to open that file. They're going to see that message that says you don't have permission to view this file. If you're going to put a Google file into a portfolio for a student, you want to make sure that you, the teacher, own the file. And the way that that happens is the student turns it into you using the Google Assignments tool. If the student turns the file into you using the Google Assignments tool, you will now be the owner of the file, and you will be able to put it into the portfolio for the student, click the Share with Parents button, and that will actually allow it to be viewed outside of AACPS. So just be mindful if what you're utilizing in your class and what you might want to put into portfolios is Google files, that you need to think about that. We've got some resources to help you get into using the Brightspace portfolio. The first is on Teacher Intro to Digital Tools. Under the Brightspace heading, there is an entire page dedicated to portfolio. And then also our blog, which is known as the AACPS OIT Byte, has a specific blog post on using the Brightspace portfolio specifically for conferences. So let's take a look really quickly at each of these resources. If I select on Teacher Intro to Digital Tools, you would find it under Brightspace and then down here on the portfolio page. You've got some information at the top about what is the portfolio, how can it be utilized, and then we get into those documents that we have here that are resources, as well as video tutorials on utilizing the portfolio, both as a teacher and as a student. Coming back to my presentation again, let's select on the second resource there, and this is where you'll see that blog post written by Darren Towers, our LMS administrator, all about using the Brightspace portfolio for parent conferences. So I hope you guys really enjoyed today's virtual session, and I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks for the next one.